Welcome back to Literary Libations with Librarians. This week our theme is books that make us happy. And if you can see on your screen my sparkling unicorn, that's a thing that makes me personally very happy. So I hope that you listen along with us again this week, that you have some laughs with us, and that you find out more books that you want to add to your to-read list. If you do find books that you want to add to your list, there are some ways to get your hands on them. We are currently closed. The Monroe County Library System is closed along with the guidelines from the state and local health department. But you can still get onto our catalog. You can still request those hardcovers, paperbacks, CD audios, large print. And today, a couple of the books that we're going to be talking about even have book club kits. So if you didn't know that you could get a book club kit through the Monroe County Library System, you can. That's a set of at least 10 books, and you can go out and share them with your friends and have your own little book club get together. If you would like to request something digitally, every single one of the books that we talk about today is available digitally via one of our apps through the Monroe County Library System. And those apps are Overdrive or Libby. Overdrive is the company that creates it, and then Libby is the name that they've given to their cute app. If you're on your device, you can search for Libby and download it. And Overdrive Libby provides ebooks and audiobooks that you can download. Hoopla provides ebooks, audiobooks, and also movies, music, and graphic novels. And RB Digital provides audiobooks and also magazines, access to Acorn TV, and access to the great courses. And the fabulous thing about Hoopla and RB Digital is that there's never a wait for any of their items. RB Digital doesn't even give you a limit for how many items you can check out. So that is fabulous. To get to these things, you can go to the website that's listed there, or you can go straight to your device and just search for the app. So that's how to get your hands on the books that we're talking about. Once again, there are 6 of us this week, and our theme this week is books that make us happy. And so our introductory question for this week was to share something in your home that makes you happy. So I'm going to start with myself again, because I'm all dressed up in things that make me happy. I've got a background that makes me happy with my unicorns, because who doesn't love a unicorn? And if you don't love a unicorn, don't tell me. So I have a shirt on. If you can see it, I'm going to lower it. This is Walt Disney, the young Walt Disney, when he was an early animator and an innovator and a person that looked for ways to create happiness in others. If you know his background, he's also a person of resilience who had several failures throughout his career and came back and said, I'm not done. I'm going to keep trying new things. So I love that. I love sparkly things. So I have sparkly things on. I have some book pins on. This one, I don't know if you can see it. There, I'll try and get real close. That one's Roz from Monsters, Inc., the one that says, I'm watching you, always watching, because I am. That's what librarians do. And also the other one is a book worm pin, and a worm, W-Y-R-M, is a limbless dragon from fantasy. So I'm not just a bookworm, I'm a bookworm. Because I love books, and books can have power, and I love that. So, and I have one other thing that I'm going to share. Oh, you can't see it because it's there. You can see it this way. This is a blanket that my mom made me. My mom's amazing. So, for those that don't know, she is visually impaired. She cannot see, and she still knits and crochets and makes me amazing, soft, cuddly blankets that make me happy. So those are my happy things. So I know that was more than one, but I get to cheat. So as I introduce all of the other librarians that are going to be with us today, they're each going to talk about something that makes them happy. And I do want to share a small caveat that I gave to them, which was they couldn't share a picture of their families, because I figured then we'd have everybody coming along. Here's my family and they make me happy. Here's my family and they make me happy. So we're just going to assume everybody's family makes them amazingly happy. And then we're going to let everybody be creative with another thing that makes them happy. So I'm going to start off with Jody Russ. Oh, and I don't know if I introduced myself. I'm Jennifer Graneski. I'm the community librarian at the Dundee Branch Library. And Jody Russ is going to be up next, and she is the community librarian at Bedford. So Jody, what item makes you happy?
Hello, everybody. So what I really love to do is plant things and grow pretty things or grow things that are wonderful to eat. And so I planted, I have this pictures on my phone to show you guys. So this is an urn that I just planted up for the first time that's on my front porch. And these are my raised beds that are made out of pallets that are in my backyard, which I'm so happy with. And then I also have a lovely strawberry planter, and this little, I just planted this up. It's one of those Prince Tut plants, which I can't wait to see how cool that thing looks when it grows up. So planting things and watching them grow are the things that make me happy. And so that's what I've been doing.
So what was in that first planter that you showed?
The urn that's on my front porch.
Yeah.
There's a fern in the center of it.
Okay.
And then there's some ivy that's going to grow down the side. And then there's impatiens. And coleus, because it's a shade, it's under my front porch, so it's in the shade, so I had to do shade loving plants. So, and hopefully those are all going to grow up and fill it up really nice and big and fluffy.
Awesome. I love people who love to garden, because I can't. I planted petunias.
Yay!
Because they're colorful and usually I can't kill them.
My raised beds have all kinds of, I have tomatoes and beans and peas and onions and peppers and carrots and beets and all kinds of stuff in my raised bed. So I'm really happy with being able to do that.
I want to garden so bad, but every time I try, I get about 2 minutes into it and go, wait, no, I don't like this.
You have to like it. Yeah. I grew up doing it. My mom's from a farming family, so I grew up doing it. So.
All right, and we will have Jen McCarty, the reference librarian at Ellis, go next.
Okay, so I had a really hard time deciding what I wanted to share. So what I landed on was something fun. I'm going to tell you a little story quick first. Several years ago, my cousin went to college for her master's in New York City, which was super awesome because she lived there and we got to go hang out with her for free and, you know, stay in the city for free. So the one summer that we were there was around the 4th of July. And while she was in class learning, we got to explore the city. At the time, the FAO Schwartz store, which I don't think even exists anymore, had a build your own Muppet workshop. So it's basically like a Build-A-Bear, but for Muppets. So this is Mr. Ben Frank. We named him Ben Frank because I was there over the 4th of July. And while I was there, I got to go to the New York Public Library and see an original copy of the Declaration of Independence. So I felt like this guy needed a patriotic name, and that was the coolest one I could think of at the time. So this is Ben Frank. He's my Muppet. Oops, he's going in and out. He, there you go, Ben. Stop hiding. He doesn't get to come out much. I keep him on the shelf for the most part behind me, and because you know, kids, and I don't want them to touch him because he looks like a toy, but he's not. No. So this is Ben. He's silly and he's funny, and I love the memory associated with getting him, carrying a Muppet through the airport on the way home. Got a lot of weird looks, but I was okay with that because he's so cute.
Aww. So that's awesome. Hey, Ben, welcome to Literary Libations with Librarians, Ben.
Hello.
All right, Kristen. Kristen Brown is a reference librarian at Bedford. And what is your happy thing, Kristen?
So my happy thing, I'm going to have to pan you over a little bit, is actually my curtains that I have. And it might be a little tricky to see, but these curtains were in my grandparents' house. And my grandmother passed away about 7 years ago or so. And my grandfather just sold the house. And so before we were getting everything out, I snatched up these curtains and I cut the tops of them off because they had the crazy hooks where they were all like sewn into pleats. So I cut those off and sewed them together and washed them really well. And so now they hang in my dining room and they make me super happy.
Aw, you're so crafty. And what a nice reminder of your grandma.
Yeah, nice.
And Kelly Venier is the branch technician at South Rockwood. And what is your happy thing? Oh, I got to bring that up.
Yep, slide of it.
Just a moment.
This was also really hard for me to choose. I think my whole house makes me happy and everything inside of it. So it's hard just to choose one thing. But the one thing that I chose was a china cabinet filled with my grandmother's china. Inside is the first thing that she bought with her paycheck when she was 16. So it's rose china. And then the china cabinet that holds it, I got from a friend and her husband. They were Marie Kondoing their house and decided that this particular piece of furniture didn't bring them joy any longer. And now it brings me joy. So it's moving down. So I loved it. This is in my dining room. I walk by it every day and it brings me a lot of joy because there's stories with all of it, everything that's on it and in it. So that brings me joy.
Aww.
Can I just make a quick comment on that?
Absolutely.
My mom has the same exact cabinet in her kitchen, and that was actually the kitchen cabinets of her grandparents. That was it. That was their kitchen storage.
I love it.
It's a very cool cabinet.
It's my favorite piece, my favorite furniture piece. And then, just having my grandmother's china in there, is awesome too.
Oh. All right. Well, thank you. And with us this week, we also have Suzanne Kruger, and she is the community librarian at IDA. And what is your happy item, Suzanne? Oh, you're muted. Suzanne, unmute yourself. There we go.
My happy item is this little featherweight sewing machine. You can see I can hold it with one hand.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I bought it from a neighbor, an old neighbor where I grew up. She was getting rid of things out of her mother's house, and our parents had been good friends all their lives, and her grandparents were good friends with my parents. So it has a lot of, I guess, a sentimental attachment. So it makes me happy when I sew on it. And this last winter, I made a quilt on it. And it's fun to sew on, and I love it. I love to sew. And I do want to say something about our downloadables. I do crocheting too. And I taught myself, or I should say retaught myself for like the third time in my life a few years ago. Hated it as a child. But I used our downloadable books for crochet patterns. And we certainly have magazines and ebooks for different hobbies like quilting and crocheting and other hobbies. So if anybody is interested in pursuing or learning a new hobby, we do have resources for that online that you can download.
That's an awesome reminder. I am not crafty, so I don't always think of that for our downloadables, that there are so many things out there. I can't remember, somebody mentioned, maybe it was Christine, mentioned the great courses have some art courses in there as well, and that's on RB Digital. It's just amazing, the resources that we have. Just take advantage of them once you know they're out there. All right, so this week's theme is we're going to be talking about our happy books, books that make us happy. Now remember, happiness isn't just happiness can also be just a sense of satisfaction that this book exists in the world and you are glad that you got to read it. So there can be a wide variety of definitions of happy. So as you're sharing your books, you can also share why and how this book made you happy. And I think we are going to go ahead and start with Jody and what her happy books are. So Jody, if you will go ahead and take it away.
Okay, hello, and let me just say that somebody just started mowing their lawn right next door to me, and I have a couple of birds fighting on my back porch that the cat's trying to get to. So if you hear all kinds of crazy noises in the back, well, I can't really help that. First, I'm going to talk about the author that I had chosen. We host a book club called Just the Facts that's all nonfiction reads at the Bedford branch. And so at least once a year, we do what we call an author read, where we just pick an author and everybody in the book club reads whatever book they want to by that author. And then we come back and discuss those together. So the author that I picked was Mark Kurlansky, and he writes micro history. So he takes a humble item or group of people, and he illustrates how they are changing the world. So for instance, one of his books is called Cod, and it really discusses the history of commercial cod fishing and the plight of the Atlantic fish and fisheries today as the cod faces extinction. It sounds like who wants to read a book about cod, but it truly is exceptionally interesting to see the history of how and the effects of all kinds of things, the major fishing and global warming and all kinds of things as it's having an effect on that. In addition, he's made a juvenile version of that particular book. There's actually several of his books that he's written a juvenile version of too, and so it makes it even more interesting because kids can read it. His writing style is considered descriptive, engaging, and richly detailed. Many of his titles are available as downloadable audios and ebooks. The other two that I really enjoyed, there's one called Ready for a Brand New Beat, and it's the story of the song Dancing in the Street, 1964 hit written by Marvin Gaye and recorded by Martha and the Vandellas. It was really supposed to just be a dance song, and it ended up being an American pop culture hit and an activist anthem just because it was released in 1964, and there were so many things happening in our country at that time. The second title of his that I really enjoyed is called The Eastern Stars, and this is because I'm a baseball fanatic. My son was playing baseball at the time. It's available in ebook and e-audio. It's about both baseball and the Dominican Republic, and he's descriptive enough with both baseball terminology and the history of the region to inform those of you who know nothing about either one of those topics. Interesting scenario, there's been 471 Dominicans that have played in at least one major league game, and 1 of 6 of those players have come from the small sugar mill town of San Pedro de Macarros, even though it comprises just 3% of the land and 1.8% of the population of the Dominican Republic. Some of those big names are Julio Franco, George Bell, Sammy Sosa, Rafael Batista, Robinson Cano, and Jose Valverde. So some big names in that. And then the other series of titles, I've got all kinds of books that I'm actually talking about, is the entire Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling. And these are available as ebooks and as e-audiobooks. The Sorcerer's Stone is actually available unlimited right now. J.K. Rowling released that as an unlimited, so you can get that both in Hoopla and in Libby without waits. So that's kind of an interesting thing because she wanted people to be able to have access to it. The 6 of the librarians that are speaking today, at least 3 of them, when they were asked about titles that made us happy, came up with Harry Potter. So, and I got to be the lucky one to talk about it. So everybody must know this already, but it's the classic story of good versus evil and how the clear consciousness of youth and the power of love have the magic to overcome the bad in the world. And it's just truly an amazing group of stories. I am actually listening to them right now again for the 4th or 5th time. And I wanted to address that as an audiobook because it's the best audios that I've ever listened to. So the narrator, Jim Dale, I consider him.
I love him.
I consider him a magician himself with the reading of these books. He has received seven Grammy nominations, and he's won 2 Grammy Awards for his recordings, plus 10 different audio awards, including Audiobook of the Year for Order of the Phoenix. He holds 2 former Guinness Book of World Records for the most voices in an audio recording. He did 134 different voices in the Order of the Phoenix, which my hold for that just came in this morning, so I'm so excited to go listen to it as soon as we're done. And then he broke that record by doing 146 different voices in the Deathly Hallows. Now, however, the narrator for the Game of Thrones series has broken that record of his, so former Guinness World Record holder. But anyway, the audios are fantastic to listen to. I highly encourage anybody to listen to those. And I just heard this morning, really another interesting story on this is you can go to harrypotterathome.com is a website that J.K. Rowling has created in partnership with Warner Brothers and Pottermore to extend Harry Potter in a whole new way. And there's games and activities. She's got famous people reading different chapters of the books on there. So there's all kinds of really cool stuff. I was on there for about 5 minutes because that's about all I had this morning. But harrypotterathome.com, just one more way to extend the joy of the Harry Potter series. So I highly encourage everybody to take a listen to those.
I'm waving my wand over here in solidarity.
That's awesome.
I know. I was like, ooh, close up of my Harry Potter mug I'm using.
And a follow-up question that we have to ask, for those of you that love Harry Potter, as I do as well, is what house are you in? I have on, because I knew Jody was talking about this and I knew we were going to talk about it, but also because I love this bracelet, I have mine on. I'm a Slytherin.
What?
Slytherin's the best. Slytherins are leadership, goal-oriented, ambitious, and by far the coolest house. They just are. So if the rest of you want to talk about your non-Slytherin houses, you're welcome to.
I ended up in Slytherin too, Jennifer.
Virtual high five, Suzanne. We can be Slytherins together, and I can totally see that because you and I have a lot of that goal-oriented, task-oriented, get stuff done alike.
I'm glad you picked out the positive aspects of Slytherin.
Listen, it's all what you make of it, man. It's all what you make of it. So those of you that know your houses, who else is in what?
I'm a Ravenclaw.
Ravenclaw.
Kristen, you said you're a Ravenclaw too?
Gryffindor.
No, I was Gryffindor.
You're a Gryffindor? Okay. I never actually sorted myself into a house, so I don't even know. But my guess is I'd be a Hufflepuff, but I don't really know that for sure. So
Yeah.
I've classified everyone in my house, and we have one of everything. My youngest, whose name incidentally is Harrison, but he's Harry. He really thinks he's a Gryffindor, but he's a Slytherin. He's a Slytherin through and through.
much to his
He's cunning. He's stubborn.
Maybe he's a Slitherdor.
No.
Combination.
And then my other son is a proud Hufflepuff. Like,
Yeah.
so proud of his
My
Hufflepuff.
son is a Hufflepuff, and he's super proud of it and is always telling me that Hufflepuff is way better than Slytherin.
Brian was
So.
That's funny. I can't get my
We
15-year-old
stopped
daughter
talking
to read the
about
book, so much to
You
my...
should just play him in the background for
Yeah.
her.
Yeah, I tried
Like, it was
that.
just-
Oh, yeah.
No, I tried that. Doesn't really work that well.
No.
Are you sure?
She'll come around later in
Teenage
life.
girls. Suzanne
way
would
it
be the
happened.
only one who understands teenage girls. So, well, I mean, except those of you who all were one,
We were.
probably have an idea about what it's like to understand.
They're always right.
Yeah.
And
I bet my Ben would be a Gryffindor, though. I don't know if he ever sorted himself. He's probably upstairs listening to me. But
If you start shouting down, I'm a Ravenclaw! Well, excellent. And Harry Potter, no matter your age, I just think it's such an absorbing, enjoyable story. And Kelly's been real quiet during this. So I'm just going to throw her on the spot. Have you read or listened to any of them?
I don't think
Yeah, so I never got past the fourth one.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I liked it. I like it. I'm just not in love with it. I mean, it's just not my.
That's okay. We forgive you.
But at
I'm
least
the
you
black.
kind
easy because I'm obsessed with it. Our mother is obsessed with it.
I know.
Buy it.
I know.
Yeah. had to find her own thing.
I keep saying I should probably read it now that I'm a grown up because I read them like when they came out, right? Like I was 12 or 13 when they were released, and I remember reading through them to the fourth one, and then you had to wait for the next one to come out, and then I lost interest because I'm impatient and I don't like to wait for things. So then I just never went back. So I think now as a grown up, I probably should go back and listen to them, especially like everyone talks about how great the audios are.
So good.
They really
So
are.
good.
So, I have it on my list.
It's
Amazing.
magical,
That
truly.
long list.
As a former youth librarian, I used to go and talk to the kids about it, and they'd be like, I'd say, "Oh, what's your favorite book?" Harry Potter, Harry Potter. Is that your favorite? And I'm like, not really. And I can't even tell you how many kids like gave me the stink eye, but it opened up a good conversation where you might like this book and everyone else does, but it's not always someone else's cup of tea. And so that was a good conversation. But yeah, I know I've been saying for 10 years, I'm going to read it. I'll do it.
The audios
That's-
really are
I'll do it.
worth it. So good.
That's actually why my daughter didn't read them, is because it was all the rage, and she doesn't
Yeah.
do the things that are all the rage, right? So, except
I feel that.
except Converse shoes, she does that. That's all the
Oh,
rage. But other than that, though, that was why she never picked them up in the first place, and now she just feels like she's too old to go back to it. So,
Yeah.
whatever.
Never too old.
I get
Never
it. Somebody
too old,
tells
right?
me what to do, I do the opposite, so I get it.
I
Never
might have
read
to
Harry
pull my.
Potter again,
Hey,
Kelly.
Kelly,
Never.
You're
You
a
guys might
Slytherin.
see me. Kelly,
Am
you're a
I?
Slytherin. You
Kelly's
might see
a
me pulling my headphones out of my laptop to start listening to my book as we finish talking here.
Thanks, Jody. Thanks.
Snippet.
All right, so who would like to go next and share about their happy books, their happy reads?
I will.
All right, Suzanne, go for it.
All right. So I have two books. And the first one I'm going to talk about is called Love and Other Consolation Prizes by Jamie Ford. I met Jamie Ford a few years ago when he came to Monroe County as part of One Book, One Community. And at that time, we had all read his book. Sorry about my cuckoo clock. We read his book, Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet. And that was such an enjoyable novel. He's such a wonderful writer that I decided I wanted to pick up and read his newest book at the time, which was Love and Other Consolation Prizes. It was so well written, so easy to follow. It's a historical novel. And Jamie Ford writes about different things in time. I mean, he's more of a Northwest writer. So in Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet, it was about the Japanese and the Chinese that had immigrated. In this novel, we have a character who starts out in China. He's 5 years old. His name is Yun. His mother is starving. She had just given birth to a baby. That baby is buried, and she is trying to find a better life for her son than starvation. So she sends him on a ship to America at 5 years old. No other people with him. I mean, his father was a white missionary, like I said, and his mother was Chinese. So he does make it to America. There are some things that happen that you wonder if he's even going to make it. And there he is put into an orphanage, and he is renamed Ernest Young. And he has a benefactor who sends him to a private school, or a boarding school, I guess, to get an education. And at age 12, this benefactor says, hey, we're going to send you to the Seattle World Fair. It's 1909 now. And he's like all excited. I mean, this is like an amazing opportunity, once in a lifetime, the World Fair, all of these exhibitions that are there. Well, he finds out that he's being raffled off. And the historical aspect of this is where Jamie Ford took the idea for the book. There actually was an infant being raffled whose name was Ernest, a little boy named Ernest, in the 1909 World's Fair. Now, nobody ever came to claim him, the raffle winner, but that's where the premise of the book starts. And Jamie Ford wanted to have the reader see through the eyes of a character that could tell you a little bit more. So he gets raffled off to a very flamboyant, high-class madam of a brothel in Seattle. And there he meets the brothel owner's daughter, Maisie, and a scullery maid who had also been on the boat with him and she's from Japan though, and her name is Fawn. And the three of them become very enmeshed in one another's lives. They become a family kind of unto one another. And there's an underlying mystery through this whole book, which I really enjoyed too. Like, we are seeing Ernest in his mid-60s. It's 1962, so it's going to be jumping back and forth a bit, but it's easy to follow. I know some books it's a little bit more difficult. But now it's 1962, and the second Seattle World's Fair is coming about. Ernest's daughter is writing an article, so she's gone to her dad to ask questions. Well, there's some things about Ernest's past and that he doesn't really want to talk about. But she's a pretty good sleuth. Anyway, the underlying mystery is, who is Gracie? Gracie is his current wife. Was she Maisie? Was she Fawn? Was she somebody else? And so we see how the lives of these three people unfold. We learn a little history. It's so well written, so enjoyable. You'll love this book. I love this book. I love Jamie Ford's writing. He's a fabulous person in person too. So I hope you like this book as much as I did.
Has anybody else read Jamie Ford, either Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet or Love and Other Consolation Prizes? He's got another one too.
I have read both of those. I have Love and Other Consolation Prizes right here on my table. When I saw the cover on your slideshow, I thought, oh yeah, that'd be a really good book to talk about. So yeah, I really enjoyed that too.
It was really good. Our book club did it, and it was really well received. It's got a lot of details. It's just a great story. Just
it is
all together.
It is.
It sounds really interesting.
Oh, it is. And last week when you guys did this, I picked up a whole list of books that I wanted to read. So I'm glad that you guys are doing the same thing. All right, my second book. Now this is probably going to come backwards, but Jennifer has the slide. It is called A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles. And my book club read this book last, I think it was January, we discussed it. And it's just one of my favorite all-time books. This too is a historical novel. I don't believe there's any underlying mystery in it, like there was for the Jamie Ford book, but beautiful writing. Oh my goodness. One of my book club members said, it's like candy. And I find candy a little too sweet when I think of that, but it's definitely a treat to read, a treat to experience. And that's what I feel about A Gentleman in Moscow. It's an experience. It's such a beautifully written book. So our main character, Count Alexander Rostov, he's deemed an unrepentant aristocrat by the Bolshevik tribunal. And the Count is sentenced to house arrest in the Metropole Hotel, which is a very fancy high-end hotel. It's a real hotel across from the Kremlin. And so his life goes from never having to work, having his own little routines, being surrounded by beautiful, elegant things. Well, that doesn't change much because the Metropole is beautiful. But he's imprisoned in a hotel. And when I first heard about the premise for this book, I thought, oh, am I going to like this? How is any author going to write a story about somebody trapped, for 30 years in a hotel? I didn't think it was possible. But let me tell you, I was in love with the Count. He's a witty, charming man. He knows the right wine pairings and food. He at one point is hiding behind potted plants, spying on the guests at the hotel with a 10-year-old. Oh my gosh. I just get so excited about this book. It was such a beautifully, and in the scenes behind, everything, the Soviet Union is changing, and all of this is going on. So there's this historical aspect. I really didn't like history in school. I really didn't. But every time I read a historical novel, I love it. And I can pick and choose, and I can go online and I can look up the stuff. And this author has done his research. And I thought, what a glimpse into another world that I could never even imagine. And this Count, at one point he's down and he's thinking about committing suicide. And by the end of the book, his life is the fullest that you could possibly imagine. It's just an amazing book. It's, it's like an amazing ride. You don't want it to end. So what more can I say? Has anyone else read this book? I really, really loved it. It's among my top most. Really? You haven't read it? Oh my goodness.
It's on a lot of lists right now because of the quarantine and because this gentleman is basically stuck in that hotel. So I've seen it on a lot of lists and it gets rave reviews, but it's not one that I've picked up.
I was reading Goodreads last night for different reviews of different people, and I was like, oh my gosh, Bill Gates and his wife Melinda, you know, they were on Goodreads reviewing this book, and it's like, wow. It's truly just a beautiful experience. You know, there's hope, there's change, there's friendships that last a lifetime. You will love this charming count. I like character-driven novels, and this definitely was, and I just adored this book. Okay, I don't know how else to put it. I should stop gushing now.
We all need to put it on our list. Suzanne
Yes.
has a list too, and she's a Slytherin, so she knows what she's talking about. So,
It's on my list. It's on my list now, even though she is a Slytherin.
Yeah.
I will say I did during our time at home here, I did read another novel that he wrote before this one, not at all like this one, but still really great writing, and that was The Rules of Civility. And that one takes place in New York City with some different characters, and I really enjoyed that one too. But
Nice.
this is going to be one of my all-time favorite books, so I hope you get a chance to read it. Thank you.
excellent. Thank you. All right, who wants to go next to share their happy reads?
I'll go.
All right, go for it.
Yeah.
Or was that Kelly?
Wait, who's going? I can go.
Okay, Kelly's going. Sorry, I couldn't tell your voices. Go for it, Kelly.
So my two books are juvenile literature. Being a youth person, I have read a lot of juvenile, and that's the avenue I tend to go. I enjoy YA and J books. So the first one I'm going to talk about is The Remarkable Journey of Coyote or Sunrise by Dan Guymanhart. If you don't know anything about him, you should. He's amazing. He writes really touching, inspiring, realistic fiction. This book, I had a lot of people tell me that I needed to read. And here's the thing that I should tell you. I don't normally find out what books are about. I don't read the back cover. I don't read any reviews. If someone says, oh, this book is really good, I stop them there and then I put it on my list. Just so that I don't walk into a story with preconceived notions. So my summaries are going to be kind of short here because I don't want to give anything away. But The Remarkable Journey of Coyote Sunrise. Coyote and her dad, Rodeo, they've been on the run for about 5 years now. They travel around in a large yellow school bus that they've named Jaeger. The school bus is totally decked out. They each have their own partition or rooms in the school bus. They have books. They have tomato plants. I mean, it's legit. But Coyote hasn't been home in all this time. And when she learns that the park back home, the park that holds her childhood treasure, is going to be demolished, she has to devise a plan to get her dad to drive 3,600 miles back home in Washington State in 4 days without him knowing why. On their course home, they pick up a strange crew, all of which help Coyote and Rodeo, her dad, learn some hard lessons about themselves. This book, the characters are phenomenal. You'll laugh, you'll cry. I can't even, there are no words on how full this makes my heart. There's so many life lessons for grownups and for juveniles. I want to cry just talking about it. But I feel like that with all of his books. So if you get a chance, you should definitely read that. I did get online, and there was a website that Dan put together, or I'm sorry, an interview, and he did some fun facts about the book. I'm not going to read too many of them because I don't want to give anything away, but one of the things that I thought was really cool is fact number 3. Dan actually went on a road trip with his friends to do research for the book. They rented an RV and basically drove nonstop for 10 days. And we woke up, he said they woke up in a new place every day. They saw a lot of amazing things and met some really interesting people. And they racked up almost 4,000 miles. So he said he had a blast, and that was a great way for him to do some research so that the readers could kind of be on the journey with Coyote and Rodeo and that crazy band of characters that they pick up on the way. The second one, that I love. It makes me so happy. But I mean, really, this man in general just makes me happy. Is Dead End in Norvelt by Jack Gantos. I have a huge librarian crush on Jack Gantos, and I always will. I had the honor of meeting him a couple of times at the Allen Workshop, which is a adolescent literature workshop where all these amazing authors come together and they give away free books and they tell their stories, and I just love him. He's written a great deal of books, but this book is my favorite. Dead End in Norvelt is a mix of truth and fiction about a boy named Jack, just like the author. He lives in Norvelt, Pennsylvania, which is a real place. But Jack has big plans for his summer vacation that are immediately shut down when he is grounded for life because he shot a rifle, and it didn't end well. His mom loans him out to help a quirky, outspoken neighbor who needs help writing obituaries. That's right, obituaries. She has the crippling arthritis in her hands, and so it's Jack's duty to help write these obituaries and get them into the newspaper. But one obituary leads to another, which throws Jack into a strange adventure, which involves a homemade airplane, Eleanor Roosevelt, a man on a trike, molten wax, lots of nosebleeds, Hell's Angels, and maybe murder.
Ooh,
All those things. I mean, it's awesome.
Wow.
Jack Gantos actually reads the book for you on audio. I'm a big audio listener. That's pretty much how I read all my books, read my books, or listening to books. And his voice and the way that the characters come alive are amazing. And if you've read this book, which I know my sister has, there is one scene with a nosebleed and melting hands and a hot pile or in a hot pot of wax that just kills you. The way that he tells it is amazing. He is an amazing person. This book won a Newbery Award for the writing, and you won't be disappointed in any of the books that you read by him. He has a companion book with it called From Norvelt to Nowhere, where him and his quirky neighbor go to see Eleanor Roosevelt's grave, which is also hysterical. So it's a great historical fiction, but also humorous, and it will make your heart happy. I guarantee it.
Nice.
That's so good.
And I
can tell by the way you started laughing just from the description of like hot
Oh
wax.
my gosh, that scene is like the best.
It's absolutely, and even the opening scene, like when I used to book talk this book, or even now when I book talk it, like if I can, I will read an excerpt from the very beginning because it hooks you immediately. Like it's the start of his vacation. He fires off that bullet because he's pretending to be a war guy. He doesn't know that the bullets are in the gun. So when it goes off, all craziness lets loose. He thinks he kills the neighbor because the ambulance shows up, but the ambulance is actually a plumber who was actually going to the neighbor's house to get the hearing aid out of the toilet. So it was all these things. Blood is everywhere. He thinks he's bleeding, but really it's just his nosebleed because he has chronic nosebleeds from when he's nervous. I mean, it's just all of this stuff is going on, and you are just laughing and sobbing. So funny because he's amazing. And his other books, he's got a nonfiction book too that's great. But what I like about him is he takes snippets of his life and parts of his life and he exaggerates on it, which I think is really personable. So
well, and there's another one after this too. So if you read this book and you enjoy it,
yeah, the companion book is from
Nowhere.
Yeah. Read Jack Gantos, he's amazing.
And just a reminder, these middle grade, middle school fiction, anybody can enjoy them.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Some of them are so amazingly well written. You know, if you're an adult and you're like, not for me, just try it. You know, sometimes you need something different and try it out and have a laugh. So has anybody else read Jack Gantos? The only one I've read is his for younger kids, the very first Joey Pigsa.
Oh yeah,
Joey Pigsa's are good too.
Yeah, they are really good.
And I'll go back even farther than that. He originally started with picture books called Rotten Ralph, and it was a little red cat, an evil cat. So he's got some picture books and then some like ABC readers of Rotten Ralph, and then it's kind of expanded from there. But I think too, like meeting him and knowing him like just adds to the whole to his whole writing style, and just everything about him's awesome.
I'm terrible at meeting authors. Like, I always think it's going to be the best thing ever, and then I'm like, here, will you sign my book?
Same.
Because you don't know what
I
to
love
say.
your writing. You're amazing.
They're
Okay.
like rock
That's
stars.
not my shame
I
because I don't know what
know.
to say.
It's so
Yep.
nerve-wracking, but luckily I met him at a cocktail hour, and then I had a little bit of liquid courage, and then we were nonstop talking. So it was awesome.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I can't even imagine Kelly nonstop talking.
Right? Right? We're battling over what to say.
All right, Jen, Kristen, either of you want to go next?
I'll go.
I
We'll
go.
break up
Okay.
break up the sisters.
All right, we'll have Jen go next.
Okay, so my 2 books. The first one that I want to tell you guys about is called Ready Player One. A lot of you have probably heard of it. It was really popular a few years ago. They made a movie on it. The movie's okay. But like most things, the book is better. But why this book makes me particularly happy is it's just super fun. It's a super fun read. And as someone, I was born in 1981. So a lot of the references in the book, so let me back up. I'm getting excited. The book takes place in the future where everything kind of runs in a virtual reality world called the Oasis. And the Oasis was created by a man who was obsessed with 80s pop culture. And when he passed away, he basically willed the entire Oasis and its entire fortune that comes with it to someone who can solve his sort of puzzles, little Easter eggs that he's put all over the world, the virtual world, that is. So the main character is a kid who is poor. He doesn't really have much of anything. And he's the first one to solve one of these puzzles. And it's so cool. Like, the world building is incredible because you have the real world that's kind of crappy, and you have the virtual world that's fantastical because people can be whatever they want to be. And you have all of these crazy 80s references. And I will admit, I'm kind of a nerd. So all the video game references and game references and music references from the 80s that I get it's a weird sort of meta enjoyable, like, this is so cheesy, but I love it. So it's just such a fun book. Another vote for the audiobook. I'm not a huge audiobook reader, or listener, I should say. However, this is one of my favorite audiobooks ever. It's read by Will Wheaton. And for those of you who aren't super familiar with Will Wheaton, he played Wesley Crusher on Star Trek. A lot of people nowadays know him as Will Wheaton from Big Bang Theory. But he does an awesome job reading the audiobook. I've read the book now probably 2 or 3 times. My book club did it as a book, but I've listened to it, I think, twice now. And for me to come back to an audiobook is pretty rare, and it's so good. So if you are interested in video games, virtual worlds, 80s pop culture, this book sort of checks all those boxes, and it's really, really fun. It's kind of like a weird little scavenger hunt. So it's one of my favorites.
I saw the movie.
The movie's okay.
I haven't read the book, but I think I would love the book because I liked the movie.
Yeah, the movie takes, like,
I've heard it's not as good, but
the movie sort of takes the premise and runs with it. Like, there's tasks that the kids have to complete, or the people have to compete. They're totally different in the movie. The book, they're much nerdier. Like, one of the tasks, and this doesn't really give so much away, but one of the tasks is actually having to be they're basically virtually inserted into the movie War Games, and you have to act it out verbatim. And if you mess up, you fail.
See, I think my husband would love that. He loves the War Games movies and all the 80s stuff, and yeah.
So, let me just add, I also thought it was a fantastic audiobook. As somebody who graduated from high school in the 80s, as opposed to being born in the 80s, I actually just told my brother that he needs to read this because I saw the cover on the slides again, and I'm like, hey, did you read this? I think you'd really like it. Because again, all those 80s references, it's really just awesome. Do you want to play a game?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's how we lived our lives. It's like, actually, the first half of the book, I'm reading it and I'm like, this is talking about my life. This is just insane.
Someone, like, I wasn't a teenager in the 80s, obviously, but I have 2 older brothers that are 9 and 11 years older than me. So, like, I was pretty well versed in a lot of the 80s pop culture, like, at 5 and 6 when I probably shouldn't have been. just because that's what my brothers were into, and who doesn't want to, know what their brothers are doing. So much fun.
Cool. That one's on my list too. I actually have that copy on my stand waiting to be read.
And it's a great read, but the audiobook, Will Wheaton does such a good job. And there's also there's a joke about Will Wheaton being, I can't remember offhand, I think it's president or like some sort of politician. So that's funny. Will Wheaton's reading it and they make a joke about Will Wheaton being a politician. It's just good. It's just a good, fun book.
It really is. I agree.
Okay, so my other book, talking about meeting authors and being weird, is by Meg Cabot. I was lucky to have a couple of books signed by Meg Cabot at last year's ALA, and it was very much like, I love you, sign my book. Because Meg Cabot is one of my very favorite authors. And when we proposed this, books that make you happy, I was like, well, I have to do a Meg Cabot. What one do I want to pick? And it was hard because I love all of them. And it's funny because I'm normally a science fiction reader. I'm a science fiction and fantasy reader. That's pretty much become all I read. But yet Meg Cabot is this fluffy romance. And I love her. I absolutely love Meg Cabot. So
I love her, Jen. I do love her.
I love her. So the book that I ended up selecting is Size 12 is Not Fat. And this follows Heather Wells, who was also kind of in the 80s, early 90s. She was a famous singer. She was like the mall singer, like Tiffany, for those of you who remember her. Went on like the mall tour and went to the malls and sang and did autographs and was fancy, was, oh, yay. But now she's an adult and she's not as cool anymore. And her mom, I think, has stolen all of her winnings and whatever. So she's stuck working at a college campus in one of their residential halls. So she's this person who used to be super famous, and now she's just sort of regular person in New York City working a kind of crappy, not great paid job. Like her ex-boyfriend, who was like a boy band person, she ends up living with his brother, who's a private eye, and of course, shenanigans sort of ensue. There's a mystery. It's mostly a mystery book. It's a mystery with a little bit of romance, and it's just a fun, light, happy read. Heather Wells is a fantastic character. She's this, former pop princess who's, like most of us, put on some weight. She's certainly not, like the tiny thing she used to be. And like, that's her. She's super angry about it. Like, she's a size 12 now. And everyone keeps saying, like, that's plus size. And she's like, but it's the average size of the American woman. I'm normal. Why are you, why am I plus size? It's just super, super fun. And like I said, it's got a little bit of mystery. It's got a little bit of romance. It's light. It's just a happy, happy read. There's a couple other books in the series, but anything Meg Cabot is always just delightful.
Do I have the right Meg? Did she do Princess Diaries?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, you read my mind. I was just going to ask that. That was the only one I read by her.
I really like Princess Diaries. She has a new book out called No Judgments, which is one of the ones I have signed, which is really cool. So Meg Cabot, the author herself, lives in the Keys of Florida. And last, 2 hurricane seasons or whatever, she actually sheltered in place during one of the really bad hurricanes. Mm. So that book kind of takes place on some of the things that they did, where it's sheltering in place and like the people of these small communities that just dealt with the hurricanes and the aftermath. And once again, it's funny. Like you think this is going to be not a fun book, but it is. I love her. I can't say enough about her. Like, she's just a fun author.
My favorite series was the Airhead series, where they did the brain transplant. That's a really great series.
That one is great too. Another one that I love is the Mediator series, and it's a girl who can see dead people, but she talks to ghosts and ends up, being like romantically involved with a ghost, which is weird, but it works when Meg does it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see it working. Awesome. Excellent. All right, Kristen, you're up.
All right. So both of my books that make me happy are very like girl power books. So I'll start with Fat Cat. This is by Robin Brand. And I read this book a couple years ago, and it's kind of like my go-to every now and then. I think I've read this book at least 3 or 4 times. It's on Hoopla ebook right now. And also the audiobook is really great because at the end there's an interview with the author. And so she talks a lot about why she wrote the book and where she got her inspiration from. And so the main character is Kat, and she is a super intelligent, feisty girl, but she's overweight. And so she has some body issues that she's dealing with, and she stresses out a lot. Excuse me. She stresses out a lot about about where she's going to go to college and how high school is going to look, and about the science fair. And so she gets into this really awesome science class. She has to do this project, and this project is for the entire year, and she ends up making herself the project. And so her goal is to live like early humans. So she goes from eating terrible processed food to now she can only have the things that early hominins would have eaten. And no phone, no car, nothing like that. And so as you can probably guess, being a high school student, this changes her life drastically. You get introduced to her best friend, Amanda, who is hilarious. The characters in this book just really made it for me because it's written almost like a diary, and there's so much sarcasm and wittiness. And like I said, Kat is super sassy. And so them together talking, her and Amanda, I love the relationship that they have. Kat has an arch nemesis, Matt. You get an idea of how complex their relationship is because they used to be best friends and then you realize they're not. And so through the process, she is doing this experiment and her body is changing. So she's obviously losing weight, she's gaining confidence, she's making her own choices. And during this process, she's figuring out the people that really care about her, the people that only care about the way that she looks. And so it's a lot about body image and self-worth. There's a really interesting side story with her brother because her brother starts going through things at school. There's a girl that keeps telling him that he's, you're fat. And so she is trying to process her feelings and help her brother through what she's doing also. And so it's just, when we had talked, so there was a couple other choices that I had that people had also picked, but I mean, Fat Cat, when we talked about books that make us happy, this was one that immediately went in my head, mostly because it is funny. Every time I read it, it's just one of those books where you just kind of laugh out loud. And it's kind of one of those books where you read it and you're like, yeah, girl, get it. Like, good job for you. Way to make those choices. And she really has to put her foot down on a lot of stuff and not give in to peer pressure. Because she's in high school, she does deal with normal high school things. So like boyfriends and first kisses and stuff. It is a YA book, obviously. So I just really enjoy the message in it. And I also enjoyed it because it motivates me. Even though it's a YA book, it does kind of motivate me to see how she went through that whole process. Like she actually went through withdrawals from not eating junk food because it is so processed, and she changed so dramatically. And so Robin has this really unique way of writing this book to where you are attached to the characters, but it's also really informational. Like she does a lot of background. It's very, she did a lot of research when she did this. And actually she was overweight herself. And so she went through this journey. And that's what inspired this book. And so she's actually vegan. And towards the end of the book, Kat ends up becoming vegan. And it's just a really great book. I really enjoy the message that it has for anybody, not just young girls, but for anybody who is not happy with what's happening in their life right now. And so they take charge of it. And so I really appreciated that book.
Kelly, Kelly had her hand up.
Well, I had my hand up because that book was on my list that made me happy, but Kristen stole it first.
Well, I was going to do Jack Gantos, and then
I even told my mom, I said, dang it, she stole my book. And I'm the one who told her about it.
Has anyone else read that one? I'm not familiar with that one.
It is really
I don't know what else that she has written, so that's awesome to have a new
She's
author.
written 2 other YA books. I haven't read those, but I think a majority of her other books are adult fiction. But yeah, it's good. It's funny.
Well, anybody that's got an arch nemesis is, you know, worth reading about.
Well, and it's interesting because he's her arch nemesis because he does something to her, but the whole book, you don't know what he's done.
Mm.
At the end, it like comes to head and it kind of explodes. And then like, that's how their relationship is so complex because she says that she doesn't feel for him anymore, but she does. And so she's trying not to change for him. And so she has to ask herself a lot of questions like, am I doing this for me? Am I doing this because I want people to like me? That kind of thing. So, and I mean, we all have that. We've all gone through that. And so to have a book that kind of leads you through that from another perspective, I think is really cool.
Jennifer, she wrote Evolution, Me, and Other Freaks of Nature. Do you remember that one? That
That
was early.
was familiar, but I
Yeah.
don't think I read that one either.
That was a good one too.
Good.
The next one that I have is Women in Science, 50 Fearless Pioneers Who Changed the World. And I actually have this one here at my house. I love this book because, number one, it's nonfiction. It's about women, which I love. I'm always getting books so that I can learn more about amazing women in our history and now. And also it has illustrations, and being an artist and a former art teacher, any nonfiction that has illustrations, I just gravitate towards. And Rachel, the author, does an amazing job illustrating this book. Her illustrations are really unique and they're super colorful. So I loved this book because my mother-in-law actually got this book for us. She got it for my daughter because my daughter is obsessed with science. She loves anything with dinosaurs and marine life and biology and like anything science related. She's all about it. And so we've really been trying to nurture that and support that in her. So after doing some more research on this author, I've connected in a whole new way also because she hated reading when she was younger, and she didn't really start enjoying reading until she got into comic books and illustrations. And she had a hard time in school because she could not process the information that her teachers were giving to her because they weren't presenting it in a way that was interesting to her and in a way that she could fully understand. And so being a former teacher, it is so important, and I'm so passionate about finding ways to educate people on their level, the way that they need to be taught. And sometimes that's not a lecture. Sometimes that's a nonfiction book with pictures. And so I really appreciate that she took that experience and then turned that into something else to help other people. Also, she had a lazy eye when she was little, and I had a lazy eye when I was little. So I was like, what? That's crazy. So that's why she hated books. She would try to look at the pictures and it would give her a headache, and she would try to read and she couldn't understand what was going on. And so she has a TED Talk. It's really cool. So if you want to look her up on that TED Talk, it's very inspiring. She goes over the book and some of the women that are in the book. So what I really appreciated about this book and why it makes me so happy is the layout of it. And so for each woman, she has a picture of them, and then she has the information. I read this book a lot with my 4-year-old, and we kind of skip all of this here and we just go for the pictures and the captions. So she made it really nice for all levels to read, and it's really enjoyable for me, and it makes me happy because I'm sharing this with my daughter, and I'm sharing something that's empowering, and it's expanding her mind and letting her know, like, these are women that did amazing things, and it's something that she can still understand and grow into. And so it has awesome quotes by the scientists, and it starts from the very beginning all the way to present time. She has great illustrations of science tools, STEM statistics. She has scientists like Hedy Lamarr, which up until recently I didn't know Hedy Lamarr was a scientist. I think that's pretty awesome. Katherine Johnson, Marie Curie, Ada Lovelace. So this book makes me happy because it's something that I can share with my daughter, but it also makes me happy because it's a book that is empowering women to do great things. So
That's amazing. I'm just so glad that there are books like that out there. Suzanne spoke a little earlier about not liking history, you know, when you were in school.
yeah.
And I did history and I got the grade because I wanted the grade, but I never really liked it until I started as an adult reading historical fiction or books like that. And then I discovered there are huge swaths of history that I don't know anything about. And some of that are women who are left out of our normal history book.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure I would flip through there and go, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, like there was another women empowering book that I was going to pick. It's called Little Leaders and Little Believers, and that's focused towards younger kids, and so they still have the illustrations. The illustrations aren't as in depth as this one, but it's just so important for our youngins to have books that talk about these, because it does kind of get glossed over in education. We leave out the women a lot and how important it is for us to speak up about our rights and the achievements that we've done.
Excellent. Were you going to say something, Suzanne?
Our book club read a book kind of on that theme, but it had to do with art, and it was called Broad Strokes. 15 women who made art and made history in that order. And it is by Bridget Quinn, Quinn. And the book was great because it took each artist and told their story and about their art. It had pictures. I love pictures. And and then what they did and how it changed history. So again, Broad Strokes, 15 women who made art and made history in that order. It was a great book.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anybody else who wants books on strong women, especially for girls, like I would recommend any of the Chelsea Clinton books. She's got the She Persisted series. I saw her speak at a conference and got a book signed by her for my all-girl robotics team. So, those are also really good about people that you don't necessarily hear about. I am pleased to say that I have a daughter who's in AP history in high school right now, and they're learning all kinds of things now that they didn't used to teach us, including, female people who did lots of things, gay people who did lots of historical significant things, people of all different colors and that kind of stuff. And I feel like, we learned about a lot of powerful white men when I was in school. So I'm glad that things are getting mixed up a little bit and that they're teaching them some different things. I have a niece who became a history teacher because she feels very strongly that they do not teach history right, because most kids will say they didn't like history and it's because of how it gets taught. And so, she's out there using things like Monty Python and History of the World Part 2 and those kinds of things to help teach history. So that's kind of fun. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. I think we lose the story part of history when it's being taught so often. And then somehow when it becomes part of the story, then it becomes interesting again. And I think it just turns into facts because they are trying to get through a curriculum and there's so much they have to get through.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think that makes a big difference when you can slow down and learn the stories of the people who were doing these things in that time.
Well,
history is so much more about the context of what it's placed in, and when you don't get that context, that's kind of what's cool about Mark Kurlansky's books. So when you read that, Dancing in the Street book, it's called Ready for a Brand New Beat, but you learn all kinds of stuff about the 60s that you wouldn't have known unless you were actually part of that particular culture. So It's really, really interesting.
Well, you probably remember it more too because it's given to you in a way that's more emotional and personable than if you were just reading gibberish, because it's not essential.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
I was going to say that's where. Oh, sorry. No. I was just going to say that's where things like Hamilton get so huge because you know, obviously they're mixing it up, but it's also the facts and the basic historical lesson is there, but it's just presented in such a unique, enjoyable way that now you have a whole, you know, my nephew is 10 and he was Alexander Hamilton for Halloween last year. Like, most kids would not want to do that at 10, but he's super into the musical, and you know, that's
fun.
Yeah, it's better than what I remember about history was facts and dates and memorization. And so when I'm reading all these historical novels, I've really taken the time to do the outside research and take a look at what was going on. And it's like, how did I miss all this in history?
Yeah.
Why
Did we
not?
talk about that? Exactly. All right, thank you, Kristen. So my happy reads. My first one is Anne of Green Gables, and I just have to say Anne of Green Gables needs that particular cover with it, because in 1985 is when the PBS miniseries with Megan Fallows and Colleen Dewhurst and Richard Farnsworth came out, and I was obsessed with it. And this was the book that I owned when I was 11, and watching that miniseries, and then started reading through every book that Lucy Maud Montgomery had written. And if you haven't heard of Anne of Green Gables, which I think is really hard now because Netflix has a series based on this book called Anne with an E. I can't speak to that. I've only seen like half an episode. And then PBS did another Anne of Green Gables series about a year and a half ago that has Martin Sheen as Matthew, one of the main characters. And I love Martin Sheen. Martin Sheen should not be Matthew. He's way too gregarious and energetic for the character of Matthew. But Anne of Green Gables centers on an orphan, and she's been an orphan since she was very small, and she has been moved into different homes and usually is there to take care of children. That is what she's done. And now brother and sister, Marilla and Matthew Cuthbert, decide that they want to adopt an orphan. And so they tell a friend who's going to be leaving Prince Edward Island up in Canada, and she's going to be leaving and going into, you know, the main area to get an orphan for herself. And they said, well, get us a boy. We're getting older. We need somebody to help us on the farm. And the next thing we know, poor Matthew, who is shy and retiring and really just wants to do his farming thing and take care of his cows, is at the train station, and the only person there is Anne Shirley. And Anne is talkative and imaginative and excited about everything. Oh, and you can't see my cover. I couldn't see myself. There's a cover. See, this is my original book. And she's excited about everything, and she names everything, and they go through the White Way of Delight, and she talks the whole way home, and quietly she wins Matthew's heart, who then has to persuade his sister Marilla that they need Anne in their lives, even though she can't help with the farm the way a boy could. And so Anne comes into the life of the Cuthberts, and she changes it just as much as they change her life, because she's never really been loved for herself before. It's always been whatever she can do for whatever family she's with. And so it's a funny, Matthew trying to buy a dress for Anne is hysterical. Anne inviting her friend over to just have a drink and have a tea party, and they accidentally get into Marilla's currant wine. It's funny, it's sweet, it's wholesome, and it's part of my childhood. And there's something about books that are a part of your childhood that just take you back there and just make you remember all of those things that were good. So I love Anne of Green Gables. It's available in a multitude of ways because it is old enough that it's out of copyright. So if you saw the long list, like, it's available on every digital platform. It's available in audio. It's available as a graphic novel. So it's available everywhere. I think Hoopla even has the more recent Anne of Green Gables series, the television series. You can watch that on Hoopla too. So it's out there. I love Anne. I probably wouldn't be the person I am today without Anne. My favorite Anne quote, and this is after a day where she has made so many mistakes, and she says, "Tomorrow is always fresh with no mistakes in it." And there are evenings when I go to bed and I think of that, where I'm just like, oh, thank goodness, tomorrow's a brand new day. You know, no matter what I screwed up today, tomorrow's a brand new day. Now, there's always room for brand new mistakes in there, but it's a new day. So I just love Anne. Did anybody else grow up with Anne, or am I just out there? Okay, good.
I feel like I read that when I was little, or at least we have a copy like that at my parents' house. So
And
maybe it sounds familiar, but it's been a long time.
And this is the only legitimate copy. Like, there are lovelier versions out there, but I pick them up at the library and I'm always like, no, I need my version to read. I don't know if any of you have books like that where they've been re-released and there are lots of options for you. I have to go to my option that I had when I was 11. So that is Anne of Green Gables. And then my other title is The Adventures of Nanny Piggins. And Nanny Piggins, if you have not met Nanny Piggins, you need Nanny Piggins in your life. Nanny Piggins is indeed a pig, but she's not just an ordinary pig. She's a circus pig, or a former circus pig. She was shot out of the cannon. But for various reasons that come to light throughout the book, she doesn't want to do that anymore, and so she decides to be a nanny because it can't be that hard. So she becomes a nanny, and she ends up seeing a sign in the yard of the Green family. Mr. Green has lost his wife, and now the Green children are there. And Mr. Green doesn't actually like children. What he loves most is being left alone to do his lawyer, tax, accountancy work. And so he just wants somebody to take care of the kids, but he's also very cheap, so he doesn't want to have to pay anyone. Well, Nanny Piggins sees the sign in his yard that says Nanny Wanted. She shows up and just blows the Green children's lives out of the water because she loves sparkles and she loves chocolate and she loves adventure, and she doesn't think school uniforms are worth anything because they suppress your individuality. And if you like doing voices, if you have children or grandchildren you're reading to, this is a fabulous book for doing voices. She has an adopted brother, Boris, a bear, who does ballet. And he's Russian. He is a Russian bear who does the ballet. He's very good at it. And then Nanny, for me, is like the opposite of Mary Poppins. And so she has a very, English accent. That's my interpretation of an English accent. It's hysterical. They do adventures. She lets them watch soap operas. And so I decided, I'm sorry, but I'm going to read a tiny little portion of the book. Bear with me. So Nanny Piggins, to start with, has been told that she needs to share her expectations with the children. What does she expect of the children? And so this is what she says. Well, okay, I'm ready. Children, you need not tell your father this. I'll admit I've never been a nanny before. My only previous job experience was as a flying pig in a circus, which I am proud to say I was very good at. And I don't suppose that nannying can be any harder than being blasted out of a cannon. So I shouldn't be surprised if I turn out to be very good at this too. So, I've told you my expectations. What am I supposed to do next? The children considered all the things that their father would have suggested that they should do next. Well, you could tell us to go and tidy our rooms, suggested Derek. Or instruct us to take a bath, added Samantha. Or order us to be quiet if we know what is good for us, said Michael. Oh, is that what you normally do? Asked Nanny Piggins, taken aback by these unpleasant suggestions. Well, you can do that if you like, but I'm going to the kitchen and go through all the cupboards looking for things that contain sugar, and then I'm going to eat as much as I can until I feel sick. You can join me if you like. And they did. The children soon fell deeply in love with their new nanny, and Nanny Piggins had barely shoved the first block of cooking chocolate in her mouth, and then spat it back out because cooking chocolate does not contain sugar, before she fell in love with them too. They had a wonderful time together. She let them stay up half the night watching scary movies, and then let them sleep in her bed the other half of the night when they had terrible nightmares. She let them eat chocolate not only before and after breakfast, but instead of breakfast as well. And as far as they were concerned, she was the best nanny ever in the entire world. And so that's just the first introduction to Nanny. And there's 6 books in the series, and I read them all aloud to Tony as he was growing up and old enough to listen to books. They're entertaining, they're silly, they're slapstick, and if I could choose a spirit animal, Nanny Piggins would be my spirit animal because she's amazing. So yay for Nanny Piggins. Has anybody else read Nanny Piggins? Okay, probably because I made you, Kelly.
You did, but I loved it. And everyone that I have talked to about it, all the children, they all get on board with it. And what I love is I trick them into, you know, reading book number 1, and there's 8 in the series. So they don't realize that I'm tricking them, but they usually go on with it. But my favorite scene in that one is the pie scene where she makes the pie and she's the best pie maker ever. And then she eats it and then can't stop. So then she to the contest because her pies are so delicious.
They're just so good.
They're just so good.
So those are my 2 happy books, Anne of Green Gables, Nanny Piggins. Again, Anne of Green Gables is a classic. Nanny Piggins, you could look at and go, oh, it's a children's book. But honestly, if you just need a laugh and an escape, pick up Nanny Piggins. And if you have children or grandchildren, read it to them and they will love you for it. So, all right. Any final thoughts on happy books? Excellent. Thank you all again for participating and sharing your happy reads. Our next week is going to be books that you can't put down. So books that you started reading and you just had to keep turning those pages because you couldn't put it down. So that'll be our theme for next week. Thanks everybody for participating. Thanks to those of you that listened. I hope you have new books to add to your list. And hopefully we'll see you again next week. Bye.
Bye.